Welcome to another edition of Black Press USA's Fire Program. We have a lot in store for you. Packed today. We're going to be talking about the housing market, and we're going to also talk about the automotive market. There's a lot to be said, so let's get right to our very special guests that are joining us today. We have Jo Burke-Hill. She is a realtor, and then we also have Tiffany Richards. She's also a realtor, and both Tiffany and Jo are with Sampson Property. So we're both really happy to have you here. And of course, we can't talk about the housing industry without having a loan officer. Joining us now, we have Anna Cameron, and she's with Wells Fargo, and she's going to tell us all that we need to do as far as preparing financially for that. So first of all, ladies, good evening, and thanks for coming on the show.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
So let's go from Tiffany down. Tiffany, what states do you have your license in? Because again, as you know, since we're streaming this, it's not only in the U.S., but it's abroad. So a lot of the issues and things we talk about may be specific to the DMV, but there are some general things that you can provide to people across the country.
Absolutely. So I'm actually licensed in Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jo?
Okay, I am actually licensed in Maryland only, and I've been licensed for 20 years.
Oh, great. Okay. And Anna?
I'm actually licensed in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, but at Wells Fargo, we can do loans in all states.
That is great. So we said we're going to talk about the housing market, and I think literally once a month we could have this discussion because so much has changed since COVID. And I want to know, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? What do we need to know about it right now?
Definitely a buyer's market. It's been a buyer's market for, I would say, about the last year. Right after we went through the whole COVID experience, the market started turning. And we noticed that it started picking up and the prices of the homes increased. And what created it to be a buyer's market too is that when there's not a lot of inventory on the market, that creates the buyer's market. So you have more buyers in the market to purchase as opposed to the number of homes on the market for sale. And Tiffany, I'll let you maybe piggyback or Anna on that.
Yeah, definitely. It's, the inventory is definitely low. And the whole process is taking a little bit longer in terms of securing homes for buyers these days. And I just tell my buyers, just be prepared it may be a process. It may take a little longer than you would expect. But the key is to get pre-approved. And that's where it would actually come in to make sure that if they actually find a home that they really want to move on, they need to have that in place so that we can actually submit a solid offer.
So Jo and Tiffany, are you basically stating that they really should reach out to a loan officer like Anna first before kind of coming to someone like you?
Absolutely. That is the very first step in the process. However, most buyers come to the realtor first because they don't know the process. So they look for the realtor to guide them. And then, of course, from there, we flip them to Anna to start the pre-approval process. But that is the very first step in the process.
So, Anna, I am a first-time buyer, and I come to you being referred either by Jo or Tiffany. What are you needing for me to have when I come to your office?
First, I would say initially we would do a consultation, and I would go over the process of your credit, what you qualify for, and also just making sure you're prepared and know what you're getting into. Because I think of buying a house is more than just, okay, we're getting an asset. I want you to be financially and mentally prepared because it's not like, leasing. You're going to have a financial obligation. So, but paperwork wise, I would say, pay stubs for the last month, your last 2 W-2s for the last 2 years, and last 2 years tax returns, and last 2 bank statements.
Do you think that most people, let me back up. How long is the process now with COVID and not all, everyone's not back up to full speed yet?
Okay. The process for finding a house is longer, but the process for financing is very fast still because we have to be very competitive. So, you can easily be writing a contract between 14 to 28 days. So that part, you would have to be very ready to jump right in and say no delays, because you're writing a contract for a certain amount of time. So it's not any delays on that part. And honestly, if you go closer to the major cities, you definitely are writing a contract for 21 days.
So we're coming to you, Anna. Once we give you the paperwork, that if they don't already have it, it could take maybe, let's say, a week or two. Once they finish doing that, then you immediately go and you speak to your realtor. And then what's the timeline with that contract that you've given them a pre-approval for?
Okay, so from start to finish, once you get pre-approved and I have your documents and I've reviewed everything and issued your pre-approval letter, you would start looking for your home with your realtor. Once you are on a ratified contract, then that day starts day one. And whatever you write in that contract, we will start from that day one all the way up until your closing date that you and your agent and you all have negotiated in the contract.
Anna, before, this is the question I can ask Joe and Tiffany, but I'm going to ask you first. When people come to you, what do you think some of the mistakes they make when they come to you is either not knowing or not being prepared for?
I would say not being prepared, because a lot of times people think I have a lot of time to actually look for a home or prepare or, not get pre-approved, because I may not be looking for 6 months to a year. And I personally say a year out, go ahead and get pre-approved. It's not going to hurt you. Your credit report is getting pulled one time. It is a hard hit, but it's worth it, because what you don't want to happen is you see something you really like and you're not prepared to make an offer on it and you miss out on that house. So that is the number one mistake. I feel like people don't go ahead and have that initial consultation to say, this is where I stand, this is what I need to do, so I'm ready to make the next step to buy homes.
Tiffany and Joe, what are some issues that you see when people first come to you, outside of the fact of maybe not going to a loan officer like Anna?
I primarily, for me, down payment. I don't think they're prepared for the down payment. I think that's the biggest thing that I see. And a lot of buyers, especially first-time home buyers, I actually acquire a lot of first-time home buyers, and they don't realize the money that is involved with the down payment. And even though there are a multitude, or I would say just various programs for first-time home buyers that will give you that down payment assistance, I think that there's a misconception that you don't have to pay anything out of pocket and you don't have to have savings. And most lenders will require you to have a reserve, correct, Anna?
I think her mic was low and she shook her head. So Anna, what do you normally have to have as a down payment, percentage wise or dollar wise? Wait,
I don't
Anna?
know if you can hear her, but I'll chime in.
Okay, there she goes. Anna, so what normally should one have as far as a down payment, percentage or dollar wise?
Okay, percentage wise. All right. So let's just consider a high balance loan, at least 3% is the minimum down payment. And then as well as once you go to high balance, the minimum down payment is 5%. And once you go into jumbo, it's going to be 20%, especially now since COVID has happened. Because before then, we used to offer 10% down payment on certain jumbo products, but that restriction has been in place since COVID. So that's one major change that has happened. But you definitely can buy a house with a minimum of 3% down of the purchase price. But keep in mind,
jumbo. You said jumbo. For those people who don't know what that means, would you explain, define that?
Okay. So it's going to vary from county to county for every home that you're looking at. So for example, let's say if you're looking in Prince George County in Maryland, a jumbo loan would be like an $800,000 house or that $1 million house. That's a jumbo loan.
Okay, great. And so Joe and Tiffany, you were talking about there are programs out there for people to get some assistance for the down payment. Can we talk about those agencies? Is there a place for them to go? Do you guys refer them? Are they partners with you as far as being able to give that information when you get a customer in your office that needs that help?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Tiffany, I'll let you go.
So I know in DC, they have the HPAP program.
Yes.
And most of the time, what they would have to do is connect with a lender that actually is familiar with that program, and they'll kind of walk them through the entire process. Oftentimes, these first some home buyer programs require them to actually sit through some type of educational process, which since COVID has hit, they can actually do it online. And then they would actually work with the lender to actually walk them through the additional steps of the program.
You know, I'm always amazed when people leave money on the table. It just takes a little bit of time to, as you said, Tiffany, to take some of these programs that are there and they just don't really know where to go because it is a process. And Anna, as you said before, understanding the full ramifications of what you're doing, because some of these apartments, they're more than what you pay for a house.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely.
So, Tiffany and Joe, where are the hot areas in the DMV as it pertains to buying a house or looking for one?
I would say in Maryland, of course, PG County, Bowie is a hot area. Charles County is pretty hot too. That's a thriving market too. Because one, the taxes are cheaper and the home value is priced lower than a Bowie, that type of area, because the taxes are higher. The further north you go, taxes are higher, and the closer that you are to DC, the taxes are higher. The price of the home, so you're hit with a double whammy. But further south, the Charles County area is pretty popular.
So, what's the average size home and price point right now?
Tiffany, you want to go? I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, in terms of DC, some of the hot areas are like the Southwest waterfront. They're building tons of condos in that area. They just kind of revamped the whole wharf area. Petworth is popping off, and east of the river as well. You know, we're seeing a lot of movement, like in the Congress Heights area, Berry Farms, as well as Deanwood. Their property value has appreciated a lot over the past year to year. So those are a couple of hot areas as well in the DC area. And of course, you know, you have the American University area as well, but that kind of gives you the gamut in terms of the price point, where you're closer to, say, Tinleytown or American U, where the homes are well over $1 million, but you can still live in DC and maybe find something for in the fours, maybe in the Southwest area or the Deanwood area in Congress Heights.
And DC is such a different animal in the sense of DC, there's no more land. So where you can find land in Prince George's County or Charles County, it's in DC. So I have seen homes that were uninhabitable and they were selling for $600,000 up.
Yes. You see that very often.
So I don't know how flippers make it there in DC, but that kind of leads me to my question. Is the process for purchasing a home different for commercial or investment property? Is the process a little bit different, or rules and regulations?
I would say it is. It's definitely very different commercial wise from residential resales. It's definitely a different ball game. You have a lot of realtors out here who specialize in commercial. I in particularly don't and do not. And really couldn't answer a question about commercial real estate. I do know that is definitely a different beast than residential resale.
And Anna, people come to you for that process as well, or do you, just like there is commercial realtors, is it different for a loan officer, or you can sell them or help them with that process as well?
It is different. So with commercial real estate, it's a separate department and also separate loan officers. So it's a totally different space. Also with commercial real estate, it has to be over a 5 unit to be able to finance for commercial real estate. And it's a lot different process, down payment and everything.
Tiffany and Joe, how do you, and actually you, Anna, as well, how do you prepare your clients for the possibility of being disappointed? I mean, you get your hopes up. I can't imagine, being excited about a home and either someone outbids you or the seller just doesn't accept your offer. How do you really prepare or help clients deal with disappointment like that?
I think for me, I'm more of a person who is solution oriented. And for me, I try to put myself in that person's shoes. When the disappointing news comes across, we as realtors, we get it first, and then we have to relay it to the buyer or, the seller, in a case, just depending on the situation. But just being solution oriented, putting yourself in that person's shoes and actually caring about what their feelings, may be in the process.
Tiffany?
I agree. I mean, I also try to put myself in their shoes and just allow them to kind of vent their frustration when a contract is not accepted. But I also reassure them that, even though they didn't get this house, there are other homes that we will eventually see, and someone eventually will accept their offer. We just have to be prepared for their process, because everybody's journey in terms of the home buying process is different. And I always tell them, I'm here to support you during that journey.
I just actually experienced that with the buyer together. We worked with her for a year, and we had to keep encouraging her. We were her cheerleaders, her real estate agent, her counselors. I mean, we're everything.
Wow. So you guys are, 24 hours, even though there's, that's a full day. You guys are probably on the clock all the time, right?
All the time.
Yes.
All the time. We have to take out breaks. Tiffany's good about that. I'm not. I'm learning, but I'm not there yet, but I'm learning.
Well, speaking of taking breaks, how hard did the COVID in general impact your business and you financially, as far as, that was some scary times. I did hear at some point they were doing things virtually, but can each of you talk to me about how you had to readjust due to COVID?
I think for me, I think overall the real estate market pivoted pretty fast, and we really had to embrace this whole Zoom call and this whole virtual thing, and just being able to make sure that was available for potential buyers or sellers, and put in like COVID-19 protocols in place so that if someone is actually selling their home, these are the things that we're going to list in the multiple listing service. So if someone's bringing a buyer to see a home that's on the market, yes, they need to use hand sanitizer. They need to put on their mask. And, if they experience any type of symptoms, do not bring the buyer there. So it's just different things that we have in place that have really just kind of pivot during this unprecedented time.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest challenge was going through the whole COVID experience in the beginning was the sellers not really wanting to open up their homes to let buyers in or agents in. So I think for agents, for us, that's where there was a concern of our income, because our income was going to be at a halt, because even though you had sellers that had their homes on the market, and we had, as Tiffany just mentioned, the COVID-19 protocol in place, they were afraid, and rightfully so. Everyone was afraid to move. And so sellers either pulled their homes off the market temporarily, or either they pulled their home off the market permanently and just decided to wait, a year or two. So that was a big adjustment. But I concur with everything that, Tiffany has said. But being as though the sellers just didn't want to let buyers or agents in, which was very understandable. Everyone was afraid. The world was afraid. So we shut down.
Anna, did you shut down? Well, I mean, obviously there were some people that are still processing something, but how was the loan aspect business affected?
Very interesting. So we had major changes immediately. One of them being is if you were self-employed, the qualifications for purchasing a home was totally different. Whereas before you might only needed your last year tax returns, Fannie and Freddie put out new guidelines where they were requiring year-to-date profit and loss and up-to-date business statements to showing you were receiving income. So that was a major change for people. Also, too, if you went into forbearance for your mortgage, guess what? You couldn't refinance or purchase a home if you were in forbearance on your rent or your mortgage. So that was a second major change that we had, and we were just like, oh yeah, here it goes. Third too was appraisals. When COVID first happened, people weren't getting appraisals done. We were doing desktop appraisals because no one wanted to go into the home to appraise the house, especially like in the very beginning. There was also a lot of other things behind the scenes, but that definitely was the major like top things that happened. It's just also like the dynamic of rates went down, which was awesome, but the qualifications for purchasing or refinancing was totally different. And you got to think of all those people also too that if they were commissions either outside of being self-employed, their income calculation was totally different. Especially if you were paid hourly versus salary.
Wow. Joe and Tiffany, so I want to give people some information to really prepare if they're in the market. So individually, we can start with Tiffany and then go to Joe. What are 5 things that someone who is interested in buying a home, what are 5 things that you suggest they start right now preparing and being able to do?
The first thing they should do is check their credit report. They can actually go to, I think it's freecreditreport.com.
Yes.
And actually pull up their credit report, and they would be amazed at what's on there and what's not. And if there's something on there that they are concerned about, they can actually start resolving those issues now.
Okay.
I would say start setting aside some money because, as Joe said, even though there are a number of programs that will help you with closing or down payment assistance, you still have some out-of-pocket expenses when you do purchase a home. Number 3, call Joe or myself if you're in the DMV area. And then we'll actually kind of talk you through the process in terms of what your time frame is, and what your expectations are, and also kind of get you set up so that if you don't already have a lender like Anna, we will actually refer them to Anna so that they can actually get pre-approved. And then after that, we'll just hit the ground running.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on what Tiffany just mentioned, great points. And that's definitely where you want to start. But also, a lot of people use Credit Karma. So understand that your scores there aren't going to be as accurate.
Yes.
And it's going to be a disparity in what you see on Credit Karma or some of these other credit reporting sites as opposed to what Anna will see. So don't be shocked when you say, oh, I have a 690, and then Anna pulls your credit and said, well, you really have a 640. So Credit Karma.
That's a very good point because they promote that a lot. But Anna, that leads me to ask you the question: what is a good credit score in the sense of where you can get the best deals on a home?
So a good credit score is above a 680, but I will always tell my clients shoot for over a 700. The reason why is it's a lot of regulations in place to make buying a house affordable for you. But the key thing you got to remember is when you buy a house and you're putting down less than 20%, you're going to have mortgage insurance. Your mortgage insurance is actually going to be based upon your credit score. So whereas if you have a 660 versus like a 720 or 740, you may be paying a difference of $200 a month. Wow. So over time, that's expensive. And I always just tell people, look, I know you're in a rush, but just take the time to go ahead and fix your credit now. Like I would say, you want to pay now or do you want to pay later? Like which one is, so just take the time to definitely go ahead and fix your credit. And to piggyback on what they said, also too, don't use what's on your credit cards too, because a lot of times you can do credit monitoring with your credit cards. Your score is not the same as what it is on credit monitoring, trust me. So another rule, like you said, the free site as well is you can pay to have your credit report pulled through all 3 bureaus. It costs, but it's worth it. Just think about it as a long-term investment. And outside of buying a house too, anything you finance, once your credit is there, it's going to be cheaper. So, this is just not for buying your house. This is just a lifelong lesson that'll help you. So I would definitely recommend go ahead, try to get your scores over 700 because it definitely makes a difference in your monthly payment as well as your interest rate too. Because interest rates are
that's crucial. And each of the credit agencies allow you to pull your report one time for free. So it's after that where the expenditures would come in. So I want to also ask you about bankruptcy. I had a question that came in actually before we even went to the show. If someone has filed for bankruptcy, can they get a short sale? I wasn't sure what that question is. Are they able to get a home on short sale or foreclosure property?
Yeah, so that's just a type of property, meaning that does a bank own it, or does the person that is selling their house owes more than what it's worth? So that's what a short sale is. And then a bank foreclosure is the bank owns the home because the previous owner didn't pay and it's foreclosed. So now going back to bankruptcy, yes, you can buy a house, either short sale, foreclosure, or a standard sale, if you file bankruptcy. The major key point with bankruptcy is what you do after bankruptcy. It's not a matter that, hey, you had a financial hardship. It's what you do afterwards. I cannot stress enough to you. After you file bankruptcy, please make sure you pay everything on time. If you don't, lenders will look at you as being irresponsible because, yes, they recognize something happened. You got out of the situation, but you're not doing anything to prevent it from happening again. So please, I stress that enough. Make sure you pay everything on time. Reestablish credit. You don't have to have a lot of credit. It's like maybe 3 trade lines, pay them on time, and make sure you do it in enough time too, because that's another thing lenders look for. So you can't say, yeah, I filed bankruptcy, I've been dismissed, I've meeten the time period that's required to be able to buy a house, but I've only had like a credit card for a month. They're not going to approve.
Yeah. Wouldn't you say at least having good standing credit for a year?
I would say bare minimum a year, but what really lenders are looking for is 2.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Okay, so 2. So we're going to go around the clock as we get to wrap things up. Tiffany Richards, would you please, you represent your realtor for Sampson Property. Would you, one, give some words of encouragement and how people can reach out to you if they're in the DMV and they want to perhaps look at a home?
Yeah, so just understand, buyers, that it will be a process, but you know, there is a perfect home for you. And for sellers as well, just be open to whatever feedback your realtor provides for you in terms of pricing, because that plays a large part in terms of how fast your home may or may not sell. And if anyone's in the DMV and is interested in buying or selling, they can reach me at 240-630-1735. And I'm also on Instagram at Tiffany R. My Realtor. So I look forward to serving anyone in the DMV.
Great. Joe.
Okay, I'm up. So I would say too, because I do work with a lot of buyers, I work with sellers too. As Tiffany said, stay encouraged, because if it's something and this is your dream and we're here to help you fulfill your dream, stay encouraged. Again, we work with buyers that it's taken months to find a home in this market. We do see the market coming to a slow. We are recognizing that it is slowing down some. So if you were one that pulled back because you didn't want to be in this competitive market and you didn't want to overpay and you're afraid that, you know, you're getting to this bubble and it bursts and now you're undervalued, well, guess what? It's your turn. It's coming. We see a slow. Not saying that it's a burst yet, but we do see it coming to a slow. But be encouraged, and we're here. I'm here to service your needs. I can be reached at 240-882-9300, or feel free to email at jburke, and that's BURKEHILL@gmail.com. So
I have to ask you that question too. I didn't mean to cut you off. Joe and Tiffany, when is the best time to buy? Because I know that I heard the summertime is not because everyone's moving. Is there any ins and outs that you can help people know when they should, you know, kind of like when you buy a car, you wait after October, or, I mean, so is there any tips on that?
Yeah. That's funny you asked that. It's funny because the last few years, the winter has just been as crazy as the summer. Would you agree, Tiffany? We didn't see a slow during the winter months. Yeah, and that's when we would say that's the time to buy. Try to look in the winter months when it's less, you know, people in the market.
Yes.
But the last couple of seasons, it's been just as crazy in the winter months.
Unbelievable. Yes. So we're going to leave it with Anna Cameron, our loan officer with Wells Fargo. Any word of advice, and then how could they reach you?
All right. I would say don't give up. It is a process, and just like I tell anyone, write it down, put it on a vision board, and look at it every day.
Yeah.
And the first thing I would say is just also get started. That's the most important part. Get started. You have to start, even if it's a year out. Just get started right away. Do not delay this, because hey, it may take some work to get where you want to go and get your dream and your goal and to the finish line. And I always tell my clients, I'm here with you every step of the way. You just got to take the first step. I can't do that part for you. And if you wish to reach me, I can be reached at 240-320-7074. Once again, 240-320-7074. And my email address is Anna with 2 N's .Cameron, which is CAMERON at wellsfargo.com, which is Anna.Cameron at wellsfargo.com. Thank you.
Tiffany Richards, Joe Burke-Hill, and Anna Cameron. You guys are a wonderful trio. We're going to have you back on when we get into the winter months. But again, thank you for all your information. We're going to make sure that this video, they'll also have ways to reach out to you guys and connect with you after the show. So again, thank you so much for your wealth of information about the housing market here in the DMV.
Thank you for having us.
No problem.
Thank you for having us.
No problem. Okay, so we're going to switch gears. No pun intended. Yeah. So now we're going from the housing market to talking about the automotive market. And I have a phenomenal guest who lives and breathes everything dealing with the automotive industry. Yes, and you actually may know him, Kamati Rawlins. He is joining us right now from Automotive Rhythms. Hello.
Hey, Taylor, how you doing? How are you, Taylor?
I am doing wonderful. So tell people a little bit about Automotive Rhythms, because I have known about you in this market and doing this unique industry for a number of years. But for those who don't, tell us what you do.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, thanks for having me. Very appreciative of the opportunity. So I started Automotive Rhythms about 22 years ago, and it precipitated from working with my father, who started the first African-American car magazine over 30 years ago, rightfully called African Americans on Wheels, Randy Payton. So he really, created this space for Blacks in the automotive industry from both a consumer and a media perspective. So when I formed Automotive Rhythms, I wanted to be focused more on the youth crowd, urban automotive entertainment, athletes, individuals I could speak to directly because I was in my mid-20s. So I'm a journalist, a publisher. I travel the world test driving all the new cars that come out, and I break down the technology and convey it in, the lingo, the acumen of our people, so they can understand, what some of this advanced technology means and how it can be integrated in their specific lifestyles. So, we have editorial content, TV content, video content, social media. My whole thing with Automotive Rhythms was to present information to the people wherever they seek media from, so all facets, all forms. And it just feels good to be able to, be, the motivator behind that and sit in boardrooms with executives and CEOs and then come down to the inner city and talk with the people about cars, because that's like the common denominator.
I remember that, and we actually, you sent us some videos and some images, and throughout our segment with you, we're going to get an opportunity to show that to our viewers. What I loved about when I first met you a couple of years ago, you had just gotten back from Germany. I think you were at a track. I'm like, what? And I had no idea about this world. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because you said you've traveled the world. People need to really understand you're not traveling the world and going to dealerships. You're actually going to the actual manufacturing plants and meeting with these owners. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah, so it's a very special scenario, especially for me coming from the inner city. And being able to allow people to live vicariously through my experiences. And, basically when an automotive company invites us to an event, we have access to the designers, the engineers, the product planners, the CEOs, the director of marketing, everybody who had a say in developing a vehicle and how that vehicle is going to be marketed. We're privy to before it's even launched, months before it reaches the dealership. So that way we can create our content in our own voice, in our own words, our own culture, and distribute that, to the masses. So for me, I was fortunate enough to be able to start young and see, how the industry began then. And then I made sure that I just stayed abreast of the evolving technologies and the manners of communication, so, where other industries may have failed, whether it's print, etc., I made sure I continue to evolve, so now car companies are focused on digital content and influencers and social media. So we made sure we was in that space as well. So it feels good to be able to take, a brand new Corvette or a BMW M on the track and be riding with race car drivers and learning directly from them the toolage and how to understand the vehicles, how they were built, and then how they perform individually. And then we take that and we bring it down to our market. Like, for example, I'm now making sure parents understand the importance of teen driving schools, because now young female teens have surpassed males in terms of deaths, because before the males weren't putting on seatbelts, but now the females are too distracted with these things.
Yep,
so
exactly.
I put my daughter in a few driving schools so she can understand, how 1 second can impact your awareness behind the wheel and accident avoidance, et cetera, et cetera. So as parents, we have to be a little bit more involved and dedicate more time and energy to make sure our kids succeed in that world, because driving is just as important as learning any other academics, because that's what we do daily, every day. It's going to be a part of them eternally. And we want them to be safe behind the wheel.
Absolutely. And I really love the vehicles that shut off the phones. When I first saw that commercial, I was like, okay, my daughter turns old enough to drive. That's what I'm going to get her. That's what I'm gonna get her. Excuse me. I just think that is a great thing. So speaking about special devices, I just want to take a second before I ask you a question about this amazing ad that I saw for Broncos that are featured in Black women. I was just too excited about that. There is a huge conversation that's been going on for the last week or two about the chips. Can we talk a little bit about that? For those who don't understand, why does it seem, I think used cars, there are almost 20 or 30% more, and maybe even more than a new car, which only went up, 5%. So can we talk a little bit about that issue?
Yeah, so there are, there's 3 reasons, why there's a chip shortage. The first and foremost is the pandemic. So when the pandemic hit, market analysts assumed that buyers wouldn't be purchasing as many cars. So a lot of the automotive companies reduced their orders for chips. These chips are made majorly in Taiwan and some in China. And they're not really made domestically because chip factories, they're very strategic buildings, and not anyone can just build them. They're billion-dollar buildings, a lot of oversight. They have to be super clean. Anything can affect these chips. So once, orders start ramping up and they saw that consumers were still purchasing, in fact, it started slowing down. So the chip companies can't take on new orders because not only they're doing automotive, and this is every automaker needs chips, multiple chips, an array of chips in each vehicle, especially EVs and all the advanced software in vehicles today. And then you have the advent of 5G and gaming, so they're producing chips for those industries, so they can't just stop. So if you cut your order, then you got to wait in line now. But some companies made sure that they didn't cut their orders, like Kia and Hyundai. So they kept rolling. So that's one factor. Another factor is trade. With the Trump administration and the trade agreements with China. So of course, Chinese are making some of our chips, so that affected, the backup too. But now this is going to pick up. They're looking at September, October for them to be fully back on track. And that's why the used car prices have gone up, because if the cars are sitting on the lot, the new cars, and they can't be sold till they get a chip installed, the companies are still building a vehicle and then they park them on the lot waiting for their chip to come. So now used car prices, typically you trade in a car when you buy a new car.
Right.
So a lot of used cars aren't being traded in. Inventory is low. So dealers are jacking up the prices of used cars.
I even heard rental car places, they sold their cars to make sure they had money to make them through get them through the pandemic. And now they're short on vehicles because obviously the new vehicles aren't available. So this is one time when you see where people made a prediction. It was a wrong prediction. And it's definitely costing consumers quite a bit of money. And, what's also interesting is the fact that people are understanding just how everything is all connected. You would never think a chip would stop you from purchasing a vehicle, especially a used one, right?
Exactly.
So it's really interesting. So I said to you before, I have been so excited seeing this beautiful Black woman in her yellow track uniform, and she's running through the woods, and they have a yellow Bronco. Oh my goodness. I love that commercial.
Yeah. So that's another new advanced product.
Okay.
A couple companies are coming out with, the smaller off-road vehicles to compete with the Jeep Wranglers.
Yes.
The Bronco's always been a household name. They reinvigorated it. It's not as big as it used to be.
Okay.
It's very crafted, it's very off-road. But this goes into a topic of conversation after, the George Floyd death. And an array of industries, we're talking about implicit bias and D&I within, and the automotive industry was at fault as well. So
Okay.
a group of, my cohort of Black automotive journalists came together, and we created the Black Automotive Media Group over the summer, and we sat down with about 85% of all the automakers, and we're speaking directly to the decision makers, and we really had to have tough conversations and tell them about themselves. About their implicit biases and how many of them were saying, I don't see color, so this is how we market or reach everyone. And many of them were totally wrong, but they listened. A lot of them listened. A lot of them made adjustments, and it wasn't too contrived. Some of them were very authentic. Some of them were contrived, but many of them were very authentic. And they're coming out with programs now and platforms and ad campaigns that's specifically speaking to us, utilizing us, talking to us. And in fact, my company, Automotive Rhythms, we're working with a few of those companies to create messaging and automotive content specifically geared toward not just the Black market in general, but African-American women, who, about 85% make up the household decision of what vehicle is coming in that household. And automotive marketers never really saw that or took advantage of that. So now they're speaking to them candidly. So like we're working on one specific project with Chevy and the new Bolt EUV. Now, electric vehicles is another major wave because
we need to talk about that. I'm learning about that from you.
Every automaker is looking forward to an all-electric future, including GM.
Really?
And yes, it has to be.
How can we do this? Come on.
I know.
How can we make this happen?
It's
all electric?
It's going to be a long journey, but many of them have committed to it within 5 to 10 years. In fact, GM plans to launch 30 new vehicles within the next 5 years, all EVs. So we're working with Tressa Smallwood. I'm not sure if you know her.
No.
Out of DC, film producer, author. Her company Megamind produces an array of Black films for like BET Her.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
So we're utilizing her as the voice of some content we're producing with the Bolt EUV, which is like Chevy's small SUV version of their electric car. So they have the Bolt EV and the Bolt EUV. So we're going to shoot it, produce it, cater it to her audience and her voice, make it very authentic. The Bolt EUV gets 247 electric miles. And the goal is to help our audiences understand how these vehicles work. So we go from gas to EV. That's a very abrupt scenario.
Yes.
Charging, for example, you have to become familiar with when you come home, you got to plug up your car. Or when you go shopping, you got to find a charging station like EV Go. There's a charging station in Bowie Town Center. So, okay, I charge up my car. They have different levels of charging, like level 2. It may take 30 minutes to charge up the whole vehicle, but why is it taking that 30 minutes? What am I doing? So it has to be in an area where you can do other things. Maybe I can shop, maybe I can go get a smoothie or coffee or tea, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to integrate our entire mindset and lifestyle to this new world of EVs. So you have companies like GM and Chevy and Audi with the e-tron, BMW with their i platform, and now the goal is for us to accept it. And it's just something we're not used to, but we can get used to it through repetition. And that's why companies like myself and my colleagues in the Black Automotive Media Group have these messages and create content so we can become familiar and super comfortable with electric cars.
Kamati, how is it possible to make enough ports? I mean, I see them at a couple Wawas, and I see people sitting in their car and they're doing stuff, and I'm like, what? I mean, what makes me nervous about that is it's on the grid, right? And so we've had where people have hacked into the systems. What if they do that and then they shut off all these ports where we go and, charge our vehicles?
Yeah, well, that's another thing, security and, privacy issues. And that's just with, just cars in general, the new wave of cars, remote start, cars are being, you have apps to remotely start your vehicle. Right. There's been incidences where hackers have tapped into Teslas and took control of the cars.
Yes.
So yeah, it's going to be a major topic of concern, major issue, but they're working on it, with advanced security issues. And, the goal with the charging stations, the ports you mentioned, is really to build more of them, have them omnipresent, because right now what's happening is that sometimes people get range anxiety, and that's when your electric car is about to run out of juice and you're like
that would be
20
scary.
miles from home. So it's
That
like,
would be
what
scary.
do you do? You can't just stop at a gas station, right? So now you got to go to your app, find your local, your closest EV station, get there, charge it up, and then wait for it and then head home. So,
but that's if no one's already there, because this one station that's not too far from me, I see 5 portals, if you want to say, and they're always filled.
Always used up.
They're always filled. And what about people in country and rural areas? What about them?
Yeah, and that's another issue too. People on on the outskirts of major cities. So you have companies like ChargePoint, EVgo. These are charging station companies that are currently developing charging stations everywhere. They're making major partnerships with colleges, airports, retailers. So you're going to continue to see the increase of these charging stations everywhere, and it's not going to take long. It's just a matter of them, getting through the policy and the deals with the local states and governments.
So I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. Last week I heard, I think in DC they did a display of flying cars. How about that? What's your thoughts?
I'm not a fan at all. I've seen.
How does that even work?
Yeah, because even personal airplanes, they're like, I think from the last research that I saw, like they're the #1 cause of plane crashes, because weather conditions, personal owners, there's not as much oversight as airliners,
Sure.
So if it's bad weather and you like, I got to get somewhere, you're going to fly and no one's going to
fly your car. And what I think of when I heard this, for those who know the Jetsons, I was like, when we saw that it's not the same thing. Obviously, the flying car is not like that. But I'm thinking, if I'm on the road and you're flying above me and you get in an accident above me, it's going to make it even worse when you land on the ground where I am driving my car. So I just wanted to share that with you. But you have a lot of exciting news. And one of the things I want to talk about is I'm interested in hearing about your HBCU internship that you have formed. I am so excited about this.
Yeah, so that precipitated from some of those same summer meetings. And one of the things that the car companies were saying was like, hey, we are not really seeing enough Black journalists to invite to our events. And is there a way where we can create more opportunity for individuals. So that's where the ideal came from, to utilize the talent of HBCUs, their schools of journalism, communications, and marketing, and just basically teach them the pathways to the auto industry, because this is a really secret industry. What I do is far and few between. And when I tell people, they're like, what? I get a different.
I was amazed. I'm telling you, years ago when you told me about it.
I get a new vehicle every week. Like, even when I moved in the neighborhood, I had to stop and like, look,
what do you do?
Like,
who are you?
Ain't nothing funny going on here. Like, this
right.
is a legit business.
Right.
So we've had 4 partnerships. Ford and Howard was the first bond that we created. And that was so fantastic that, Ford continued for the next semester. So we take on 10 students.
Okay.
Me and my partner, Greg Morrison, and Marcus Amick, we're the professors, and we basically break down to the students, automotive technology. We bring on designers that they can interview, engineers they can interview. They get a chance to write a story on the interview, and if it's good enough, we'll publish it on our sites. And then they can utilize that, for future opportunities, resumes, background experience. And then the companies start offering them their own internships and other opportunities like employment. So that's really the goal. So we formed 40s, Lincoln University and Audi, General Motors and Clark Atlanta. And the last one is FCA Chrysler, which is now called Stellantis. They were bought out again, and North Carolina Central. So
okay.
Yep.
So how can HBCU reach out to you if they want you to perhaps bring this program to their university?
Yeah, so we basically reach out to them. Fortunately, Greg Morrison was the treasurer for NABJ, so everyone's connected to some HBCU at some point. So he'll bring them up to me like, hey, here's 10 schools we can target. And we target them and say, hey, are you interested? And most of them are interested just naturally. And we let the auto company know. The auto company will provide the funding. We give the students a stipend as well. And then we roll out the course. And then, of course, we all promote it simultaneously together. So the auto brand is promoting it, the school's promoting it, and Automotive Rhythms and the Black Automotive Media Group is promoting it.
And I know NNPA also partners with GM on fellowship programs, Discover the Unexpected. Now it ended 6 years. So NNPA, they always keeping their thumb on the pulse of what's happening. Can we talk about, could you just list some of the careers in the automotive? I mean, careers that people may not even think about.
Careers that they don't think about. So when we talk about automotive, typically people think about dealerships and the designer. That's it. Like, who designed that car? That name might become famous. For example, I was good friends with Ed Wellburn, who recently retired. But he was an African-American, and he rose up to the top of General Motors design studios. He had like 12 studios all around the world. Graduate of Howard. And, from the Chevy Camaro to the Escalade, Ed Wellburn had a say in it, And Ralph Gilles at Chrysler, designed the Charger.
They changed that. Oh, my goodness, that Charger.
Yeah.
Oh, my. It's like seeing a Mercedes. Everyone has a Charger.
Everyone got a Charger.
They love that.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, those names become synonymous with the design and greatness. So, but there's far more opportunities. There's, PR, there's, marketing. There's experiential marketing now, designing, engineering, product planning, so when they decide to come out with a vehicle, we may see it in 2022, but they started working on it, in 2015.
Wow.
So that's what product planning is. And everyone's, offering a piece of information or perspective on what this new design or new car should present. And then how do we convey it to the market? to the different markets, you know. So you have diversity departments. GM, Chrysler, and Ford have always had diversity media departments. So they've always had diversity programs that those individuals, those executives go out and speak to Black media about the vehicles that's coming out that's going to cater to our people, our demographics, age groups, et cetera, et cetera. And then we take that same message and relay it to our markets. So there is an array of opportunities, and you don't necessarily have to be a tech person to be in these positions. I know a lot of people in the auto industry that really don't know anything about cars, but they have a prestigious car position because they know their duty, and that's what's called upon. And it may not be relevant to the product itself, how it's built, or, you know, the technical terms, but just the overall messaging.
Now, Kamati, I heard that you hosted this year's car show, Washington, D.C. car show.
Yes.
How was that? I think we might even have some clips there, but how was that? I love the car show.
Yes. So, of course, with coronavirus and the pandemic, everything had to go virtual this year. So, you know, the auto show, we've been good friends with them. We've produced content for them. We have an exhibit called the Automotion that we've produced for 5 years for them now. So naturally, they said, "Hey, Kay, we would love for you to host our digital 30-minute special." And it was pretty fun and engaging because I haven't been on camera in a while. And
Whoa,
look
at that.
New vehicles and all this new acumen and technology, and it's like you spitting it out, and it was really cool. You know, I had a great time producing that. I think it was on NBC here in DC, and the show will come back in physically in January in 2022. That's Automotion right there.
It's gonna be. This is just, I just love looking at these cars, and you know what? That's what I love doing, the test driving. I think I did the Range Rover maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh yeah.
These are some great pictures. Oh my goodness. Yeah, look, we're missing oh wow, that is sick. That is a sweet color pink. Oh, I love it.
2022, we'll be back in full effect. So yeah, you know, content production and TV shows, that's kind of like one of our fortes at Automotive Rhythms. We take the vehicle, we add music to it, we add fashion to it, some flavor to it, and then we present it. That way it doesn't seem, you know, too technical. You know, the jargon doesn't go over our head, because you can't really cater to us the same way you would cater to, you know, 60, 70-year-old white men, you know, or Hispanic females. Like, we all have, you know, different aspirations.
That's right.
And, you know, that's really what our goal is. We're the conduit between the market and the people and the auto industry. And it feels good doing good. It feels good educating the masses. And I just hope that the opportunities continue, because, you know, as a young Black man, it's like you're always holding your breath, like, man, are they going to call me back? Am I going to get the email for the next year's campaign? Because typically they don't give us like 5-10 year deals. It's like a la carte, you know, let's see what happens this year, Kay.
Yes.
But after the summer D&I conversations, a lot of them are starting to understand that we operate differently and we affect differently. And they're starting to change how they reach out to us and how they spend with our businesses.
But we're big consumers for cars too, though.
Huge.
I mean, we're huge consumers, right? So you're tapping into us, and that's at all income levels, right?
Like 28 billion annually we spend on cars.
Wow.
Annually, African Americans.
Yeah, when you put the numbers out there now, money talks. So that, wow. It is just commending you, Kamati, for having the vision some 20 years ago. And I had no idea that your father poured it into you. I just was like, when I heard about you, I'm like, that's so neat. He's into it. He's not just talking about the cars. He's going to these actual factories. And I can't imagine what that experience is, to really understand what makes the car do what it does and what makes them special. It's just really commendable, seriously. And then that you're reaching back and making sure the opportunities there for other minorities, people that look like you and I, that may be interested, that had no idea that there's a whole world out there looking for young, gifted, creative people to join it.
Yes, it's phenomenal. experience. And, you know, like I said, sometimes I look at the opportunities and I'm like, wow, that was really amazing. And sometimes you don't pat yourself on the back because you got to keep, you know, creating and pitching.
Yes.
But I do take time to, you know, regenerate and refresh and commend myself and my team for the things that we've done in execution. And we just continue and move on to the next.
So how can the community support you, or at least follow and see what it is that you're doing, what videos you're showing, what's the next hottest car?
Absolutely. In fact, we just redesigned our website. So
Okay.
that automotiverhythms.com, you know, for the editorial, for the video component, artvlive.com. And then we're on all social media platforms at Automotive Rhythms.
Okay, real quick, 2 seconds. 2 cars that we should look out for 2021 to 2022. Anything you want to give us a little inside scoop on?
Yes, I have 2 cars. The all-electric GMC Hummer EV.
What?
That's going to be
No way.
SUV. The Hummer is all electric. Yes.
I can't even imagine that.
It
Go ahead.
It has a feature called crab walk. So all the wheels turn this way
No.
and roll the vehicle into the parking spot, like sideways. Yes.
Wait, why did you not bring me that video? Okay.
I
All right. So
know,
the
I
next
know.
vehicle, the next one, that I can't even imagine. Do you know how many people are going to buy that? Because I'm going to wait to watch to see that happen.
And they partner with LeBron James to announce and promote it. So
that's done.
Gonna be a
That's done.
huge one.
That
and
is
then,
done.
And then the other one is the e-tron brand, from Audi, the RS e-tron GT 2-door performance car. Imagine going 0 to 60 in like 2.9 seconds and you can't even hear the car.
There's no way.
Zzz, and you're gone.
Are you serious? Have you driven in one yet?
I have.
Are you
driven.
serious? What does it feel like being in the car like that?
I mean, it feels like you're in the future because
wow.
Unlike a traditional combustion engine, it doesn't have to wind up. EV, the electric just goes automatically.
So that needs to be in the right hands because that is really fast.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't.
Okay.
Yeah. That's playing with fire.
Kamati Rawlins, you are amazing. I love what you're doing. Automotive Rhythms. I want to make sure I bring you back before the end of the year to let us know what's out there, to see some of the cars, and then we can talk about the 2022 Automotive Washington, D.C. Car Show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Taylor.
Thank you so very much. Well, that'll do it for today's show. Thank each and every one of us for joining us. And by the way, I want to thank James, who said, hey, Taylor, let's talk about the chips. Let's talk about the automotive. And then I said, I know who I can bring on. So listen, you've got a show idea, you have a guest, or you may want to come on the show. Simply email me at taylorthomasanchor@gmail.com. That's taylorthomasanchor@gmail.com. Let's again thank Kamati Rawlins, Automotive Rhythms, for joining us, and our wonderful guests that we had, Tiffany Richards, we had Joe Burke-Hill, and we had Anna Cameron, who talked to us about the housing market. All right, everyone, until next week, God bless and goodbye.